Hello and welcome to this short introduction to raw material risk assessment. As you'll be aware, SALSA have revised the current issue 4 of the standard, and all audits from the 3rd of September will be against the new issue 5. Within issue 5, there is a new requirement to conduct a raw materials risk assessment with regards to substitution and adulteration. This webinar will take you through some steps you can take to comply with this new requirement. So what exactly does the new raw materials risk assessment require? It states, the business shall perform a risk assessment on all food raw materials, including food contact packaging in relation to adulteration or substitution. The findings shall be documented and appropriate controls and procedures implemented. And why is SALSA introducing this requirement? It is important that the SALSA standard is always improving to take into account new threats to food safety and the changing needs of the buyers who use the scheme. In addition, the Food Standards Agency states that it is the responsibility of people producing and supplying food to ensure it is safe and is what it says it is. The Food Standards Agency has a key leadership role in making sure that they step up to that responsibility. So, what are the benefits of raw material control? Protect your customers through better understanding of your products and risks associated with your raw materials. Protect yourself in the event of any issues, both against loss of sales and negative impact on your reputation. The new clause asks you to look at the risks associated with your raw materials, specifically in regards to adulteration and substitution. So let's look at the definitions of adulteration and substitution in closer detail. These are both definitions from the UK's Food Crime Unit. Adulteration: reducing the quality of a food by including a foreign substance in order to lower costs or fake a higher quality. Substitution: replacing a food or ingredient with another substance that is similar but inferior. Both definitions are describing opportunities to defraud or compromise the integrity of food products. So therefore, potentially, the food is not safe or not what it says it is. Let's follow up with a few examples. Many of you will have heard of Sudan dyes in chili powder. This is an example of adulteration. Chili powder fades naturally, so Sudan 1 dye was added to preserve the colour, to make it look fresher, and increase the raw material price. The source of adulteration was traced to companies in India and was found throughout Northern America and Europe. It contaminated hundreds of products with a carcinogenic substance that is banned in the EU. Another example of adulteration is sunflower oil, which was contaminated with mineral oil. Approximately 40,000 tonnes was exported from the Ukraine to other countries within Western Europe. There were no reported illnesses, but its safety was unclear, so businesses were instructed to remove the product from market. Our final example of adulteration is palm oil. Sudan dye can improve the appearance of low quality oil and was found in multiple UK brands. The issue was first identified and reported in 2004, and contaminated products are still being detected. We'll now take a look at examples of substitution. Horsegate had a major impact on British food manufacturing. It affected burgers and ready meals and really highlighted how complicated supply chains have become. Meals made for Findus, ordered from France, made in Luxembourg, meat ordered from France but subcontracted to Cyprus, who used a trader in the Netherlands, who sourced meat from Romania. At some point, the horse meat became labelled as beef. Beef was therefore substituted with horse meat, leaving many European countries and companies affected by this food fraud. Another example of substitution was detected in 2003. The FSA surveyed random samples of Basmati rice using DNA testing. They found that up to 75% of rice sold as Basmati was indeed non-Basmati, significantly compromising the integrity of what is considered a more expensive and higher quality product. In the UK, 2 companies were prosecuted for this fraud. Our final example of substitution was brought into light in 2003. Concerns were raised by food experts in Scotland. This initiated an investigation by the Food Standards Agency, who then issued a report based on their findings. This report found that less expensive varieties of smoked fish were being sold as more expensive varieties. This price difference between fish varieties gave opportunities for businesses to profiteer from fraud. So, we've given you some examples, but you can find plenty of other examples online. But ask yourself, do you know whether or not your raw materials have been affected by similar issues? Clearly, attempts to defraud are secretive by their nature, and evidence of adulteration and substitution cannot be found by simply picking up a product and checking its label. So what can we do? Let's recap. SALSA's new raw materials risk assessment requires that businesses shall perform a risk assessment on all food raw materials, including food contact packaging, in relation to adulteration or substitution. Listen closely to the steps in the following slides to find out how you can meet this new requirement. The new requirement for raw materials risk assessment is found within section 1.6 of the SALSA standard, Control of Raw Materials. Step 1. Look at your supplier approval procedures. For requirement 1.6.1, you will already have a list of your suppliers and how you have approved them. Step 2. Look at your raw materials specifications. For 1.6.2, you will have specs for all of your raw materials. Look at both your suppliers and raw materials in more detail. Do you know who makes the ingredients you buy? Or are you buying from the manufacturer? Or is there a chain of companies involved? It's not wrong to buy at the end of a chain, but it does increase the risks and so requires you to take more care. If you don't buy for the manufacturer directly, do you know who's making the product? Are there ingredients or suppliers that you have less confidence in? Have you noticed variance in the quality of an ingredient or a packaging change? Where might the risks of adulteration or substitution be to your raw materials? Which ingredients do you think have a higher or lower risk? In steps 1 and 2, you looked at your suppliers and the products that they supply you with. In step 3, it's time to identify where the risks might exist. We've talked about some examples of adulteration and substitution. There are some ingredients that are easier to adulterate or substitute, and it's often about making money from somebody in the chain. For example, adding Sudan dyes make the food look fresher and therefore more expensive. Diced meat is easiest to substitute with a cheaper material than fresh pieces. Expensive named material, for example Scottish raspberries, Aberdeen Angus beef, could be substituted for a cheaper option. Poor harvests make some materials harder to find, so other materials might be used to fill the gap or bulk out the original material. These are all risks for you to consider. In steps 1 to 3, you looked in more detail at your suppliers and your raw materials and evaluated the risk of adulteration or substitution. Step 4 requires you to take action. It is hard to remove the risk completely, but it is possible to become more aware of the risks and to take responsibility for doing what you can to reduce the risk. You can do this by knowing your suppliers and more about where and how your products are manufactured. It's not always possible to buy directly from the manufacturer, especially if you only need small quantities, but you can find out more about where and how the product is made. Build closer relationships with suppliers. Buying local can help here, as can supplier visits. Test and compare products. Do you notice a variance between batches? Could keeping a reference sample, for example, help you to monitor this? Be wary. Does an ingredient seem too cheap? Has it been delivered in different packaging? There may be valid explanations, of course, so ask questions and understand why. Step 5 is to keep records. Keep your supplier records up to date. If your supplier changes, make sure that your records reflect the change so that staff know to buy from the right supplier, so that goods in checks are correct, so that you can trace back if problems occur. Keep your raw material specifications up to date. Check them regularly with suppliers, especially for ingredients that you have identified as more risky. Keep records. Document the risk assessments that you do and any checks that you have made on raw materials. Importantly, record what you're doing to stay informed and aware of any potential risks to your product. The next slide gives you some examples of where to find information. The following organisations provide information, alerts and early warnings for threats in the industry. Sign up to the Food Standards Agency newsfeed and alerts. Sign up to the RASFF EU Feed and Food Safety Alert System. You can also use their online portal to search incidents and issues. The Food and Drink Federation. Their website is a great source of industry information and you can use their newsfeed to keep up to date. So, in summary, the requirement for raw materials risk assessment becomes effective with issue 5 of the SALSA standard, so for all audits on or after the 3rd of September. Follow the steps in this presentation to help you meet this requirement at audit, and listen again if you're not sure. For SALSA members, log into the SALSA website and download the tools and tips which will give you more information and guidance. SALSA are looking into further training on the subject of food integrity. If you're interested in this training, please contact the office at info@salsafood.co.uk. Thank you for listening.